This is the Deputy Clerk. We are now streaming live on the internet. Thank you.
Hello, Abe. Would you like to do a microphone check?
Sure. Testing 1, 2, 3. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Public Defender O'Neill. Would you like to do a microphone check?
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle, can you hear me?
Hello, Dr. Smith. Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
you.
And Peter Hurt. Oh, sorry.
That's all right. This is Glenn Williams. Can you hear me?
Yes, indeed.
Thank you so much.
And Peter Hurtan, I see you there. I'm bringing you into the meeting room. You'll just have to accept the invite.
Colin, this is Don. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
And you can hear me?
Yes, Mr. Hurton, we can hear you. Thank you.
And the meeting will be starting in just a couple of minutes. If there's anybody that would like to do a microphone test that has not done so, go ahead now. And otherwise, we're just waiting for Supervisor Chavez and we'll start the meeting.
Good afternoon. This is Charlie Hendrickson. Can you hear me?
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Colin. This is Martha. Can you? Hi, sorry, Damon.
I can hear you, Martha. Thank you.
Sorry, Damon.
That's okay. And I think you can hear me, Colin. This is
Yes,
Damon.
indeed. Thank you. We hear you, Damon.
Hi, Colin. Shannon Boucher.
Hi, Shannon. We hear you. Thank you.
Hi, Colin. Joe Guzman.
Hi, Joe. I can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Mary Ann Warren.
Mary Ann Warren, I can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Colin.
This is Deborah Portia Usher.
Deborah Portia Usher and Mark Utzi. I hear you both. Thank you.
This is Angela Calderon.
Hi, Angela. I hear you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, Colin. This is Valenta Santana.
I can hear you, Valenta. Thank you very much.
This is Peter Jensen.
Hi, Peter. I can hear you. Thank you.
Hi, Colin. This is David Epps.
Hi, David. I can hear you. Thank you. And Vice Chairperson Chavez, I see you've joined us. If you're ready to do a microphone test, we are ready for you.
Colin, thank you.
I can hear you. Thank you very much. And Chairperson Lee is also here as well.
Hey, great. It looks like we're
Recording in progress.
okay. I've got actually 201 at this point. Okay, so let's get the meeting started. Hi, welcome everyone. Would like to call the Finance Government Operations Committee FGOC committee meeting to order at this time. I am Otto Lee. I'm honored to chair the FGOC along with Vice Chair Supervisor Cindy Chavez today. With both supervisors present, we have a quorum. Item number 2 is the public comment period. This item is reserved for members of the public to address the committee on any items that's not on this agenda, and any public who wish to address the committee on items not on the agenda should request to speak at this time. The law does not permit the committee action or extended discussion on any items not on the agenda except under special circumstances. And if committee action is requested, the committee may place the matter on a future agenda. Statements that require response may be referred to staff for reply in writing. Clerk, would you please let us know if there's any speakers we have for the general public comment period?
There are no requests to speak.
All right, thank you. Then we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. So we go to the third item, which is to approve the consent calendar and changes to our committee's agenda today. First of all, items removed from the consent calendar will be considered at the end of the regular agenda for discussion. The committee may also add items on the regular agenda to the consent calendar. There is no separate discussion of the consent calendar items, and the recommended actions are voted on in one single motion. If an item is approved on the consent vote, the specific action recommended by staff is adopted. Supervisor Chavez, do you have any items you would like to include on the consent calendar?
I do. And if we could, oh, pardon me, I didn't realize I didn't have my camera on. Thank you. I was interested in putting item 4, the internet voting report, item 6, the DA grant audit, item 8, the universal write-off policy, and I think, let me just look real quickly. I think we could actually put the fairgrounds master plan on consent this month. So that's item 15.
Okay, all right. So your proposal is 4, 6, 8, and 15. Am I correct?
That's correct.
All right. Let me see. I think yes, that's right. So you put 4, 6, 8, and 15. I am looking at the other items as well. I would actually like to propose item number 11 and 12 as well, if that's acceptable to you.
Yes.
Okay. Right, just making sure I got all my numbers here. I have 4, 6, 8, 11, 12, and 15 to be moved to the consent calendar. And for item 11, which is to receive the bi-monthly report from the Social Services Agency relating to the IHSS call center, I would actually like to ask to have this report come back to FGOC on a quarterly basis for the new year. And that's the only thing I want to talk about in 11. And other than that, I'm okay with the rest. All right.
may I just add some comments to the record?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Agenda item 14, I found the report very clear. The organizations from the federal government to the top universities, gave feedback on this feedback. I mean, on the report. I thought this study was well done. I want to thank the advisory commission and the ad hoc committee for all their work. On item 6, I would recommend that this report also, I just want to thank the district attorney's office for their work on the report. Again, I thought it was clear. Item 8 is a status report on the development of the universal write-off policy. I want to thank the staff for the report and for the progress they're making to consolidate and create the universal policy. And then on the fairgrounds master plan, what I would like to recommend is that when that come back to us at our next meeting, that we also get an update on the parking study at that time, and hopefully its completion. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing to see if we have any speakers on any of the consent calendar items. And I'm going to repeat those. And those would be item number 4, 6, 8, 11, 12, 15, and of course 16 and onwards. And that will be our consent calendar for today. So do we have any speaker on this item?
There are no requests to speak.
Oh, Sylvia has her hand up.
Oh, sorry.
Hi, Chairperson Lee, Sylvia Gallegos. We had requested staff if we could have item 13 be considered after 5.
Oh, yes, of course.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to confirm that that was the case. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Yes, that's right. Thank you. Yes, we will hear 13 after 5 as well. Okay, very good.
And we do now have a request to speak from a member of the public.
Okay, all right. So let the public have 1 person, 3 minutes, please.
The next speaker is Conrad Useldinger. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking. Conrad, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Just barely, but go right ahead.
Okay. So first of all, I apologize if I am out of order. I think I might have missed the call for public hearing at the beginning of the meeting. I just wanted to call in and express my support for moving ahead with the ranked choice voting. I think it's number 4 on the agenda. And I think that this is a good opportunity for the citizens of Santa Clara to show the way forward for other counties in the country. I think ranked choice voting is more expressive, more likely to get voters someone that they wanted in any seat that they want, and I think it would really help in terms of polarization that's happening all over the country right now. I think, yeah, it's just a great way for us to be a beacon in the way that the Silicon Valley so often is, in order to get more data and show other counties, districts that more modern voting systems work well, and they can get us at all levels of government representatives that we're really, really happy with.
All right, that concludes our request to speak.
Hey, thank you very much. Actually, I think he was talking about on item number 5. So for Congress, so he won't be able to speak when item number 5 comes up. Okay.
And can I make a quick announcement too? Oh, okay. I just want to let members of the public know, because I saw a couple hands were raised late. If you'd like to speak for the ranked choice voting item, that will be item number 5. So please lower your hands if you intend to speak on that item, because this is the consent calendar, and I just want to make sure I get everybody. Okay, all the hands have now been lowered. There are no requests to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin, for the clarification for everybody. Yes, that's item number 5, and we'll be there very shortly. Okay, all right. Very good. All right, if there's no more hands up for the consent calendar, let's go and close the public hearing and let's go take the vote.
Vice Chairperson Chavez
Yes.
and Chairperson Lee.
Yes, as well.
Thank you.
Okay, now we can move to item number 5. And this, of course, is to receive the report from the registrar of voters relating to the implementation of the ranked choice voting for all elected county offices. And we're going to hear 13 right after 5, as we said earlier. And here to present, I believe we have Shannon and Matt from the Office of Registrar of Voters and our county council as well.
Hi, Supervisor. How are you? Doing well, I hope. Thank you for having us back today. Originally, this item was spoken about last month, and it was referred over to this December meeting for County Council to gather some additional information, which I'll let them report on. In the meantime, we did locate a typo in the legislative file that we brought last month. So we did make that correction, which was in the subtotal of the costs related to the ongoing costs of ranked choice voting. We had a table with estimated costs, and the costs all totaled a number. We just didn't put that number correctly when we did the grand total. So we've corrected that. And otherwise, I don't have additional information outside of the report. And I was wanting to ask the 2 members if, as far as researching like the impacts of the ranked choice voting on potential like pros and cons on turnout, if it would be possible to provide that like in an off agenda format to you, some of the studies, if the 2 of you were okay with that.
Yeah, we could. I have no concerns. Supervisor Chavez.
I think that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Appreciate that. I guess I will turn it over to County Council if they'd like to add anything.
Yes, good afternoon. I just wanted to follow up on the conversation that I understand happened at last month's meeting. And the County Council's office had the opportunity to meet with advocates, review some materials that they submitted, and look carefully at our analysis. Ultimately, our recommendation to the committee is that if there's interest in proceeding with ranked choice of voting, that the committee forward a recommendation to the board to add the item to the county's legislative priorities and seek legislation to allow that to occur. And that could take any number of forms. That could be something that's Santa Clara County specific. It could be something statewide. It could be something statewide for a limited, as a pilot for a limited number of years. The legislature has obviously been quite supportive since a few different bills have passed in different iterations over the years. And the challenge has been at the gubernatorial level with those prior bills that have passed the legislature with respect to authorization for counties, school districts, and general law cities. The real legal question is, what's the authority of charter counties in this space? We've looked into that question carefully, done analysis that we've provided to the board, and concluded that this is something that would require legislative authorization in order to proceed. And as I said, that legislative authorization could take any number of forms, including a Santa Clara County specific pilot. I'm happy to answer questions that the committee has.
Supervisor Chavez, would you like to hear the public first before we ask questions and comments?
That would be great. Thank you, Otto.
All right, let's do that and open up the public hearing. I think let's see how many hands we have.
We currently have 4 requests to speak.
4 requests.
We currently have 7 requests to speak.
7 requests to speak. Okay.
And we have 8. I think it's just going to continue to go up for a little bit here.
Well, I think we still have a huge, actually, before the public hearing, I do want to mention that I believe there's the ranked choice voting group that is interested to speak and have voiced to me that they have some type of potential presentation Clerk's office, is it possible for us to promote them to allow them to do a presentation, because I think they have a PowerPoint, or if this is too late to do it at this point?
If there is a name in the attendee group for that group, I can bring them in, but I wouldn't know who they are off the top of my head.
Good. I believe should be under the name of Sean Dugar, SEANDUGAR, if he's on. I
Take a
think
look
that
here.
be able to do that.
I do have a Sean Dugar. Let's see if I can promote him over here. Sean, I've just sent an invite. If you can click on that, I believe you will be able to join in as a panelist. And he is accepted.
Okay.
And he is now in the meeting. Sean, are you there?
I am here.
Oh, thank you very
And
much.
I have a colleague, Peter Bouts, who we would like to bring in.
Peter Bouts. Let's take a look here.
BAUTZ.
I see Peter as well. Let me ping Peter. Peter, I just pinged you. You should be activated in one moment. And he is joining. Peter, I believe you are here. Would you please activate your microphone so we can test if you're able to hear you?
Hello, this is Peter Bouts.
Hello, we can hear you. Thank you very much.
Okay, very good. So what I would like to ask is, Mr. Bouts or Mr. Dugar, if you would like to do the presentation, how much time do you think you need? Something around 5 to 10 minutes?
That'd be perfect.
Okay, all right. If you could make it the tech work is great. If not, at least you can speak for that long. But go ahead.
I am trying to share my screen.
There we go. We can
Great. So thank you very much. I'm Sean Dugar. I'm the Consulting Executive Director for the California Ranked Choice Voting Coalition. I will let Peter introduce himself in just a moment, but wanted to go through a quick presentation on kind of our efforts here in Santa Clara County. So we know that in 1998, Santa Clara County voters overwhelmingly passed Measure F, which changed the charter to allow for ranked choice voting to be implemented in Santa Clara County. It was not done then because the machines the county used were not capable. They are today. We know that because the county uses Dominion, as do other cities in California that use ranked choice voting. The problem that ranked choice voting fixes, specifically in Santa Clara County, is the problem of primaries not working for everyone. We know that primaries tend to be a less diverse electorate. So we have candidates that often win office amongst voters who don't represent the diversity of the county. We know that primaries also yield lower voter turnout. They are a smaller voter base. Candidates that come from similar communities, often candidates of color, risk splitting votes under the primary to runoff system. We know that primaries can often produce non-majority winners. We know that it incentivizes negative campaigning because candidates have to kind of tear each other apart in order to come out on top. And then we know it costs more money for candidates to run, which is a barrier for women and people of color and LGBT folks to run for office and win. And we know that for organizations that do electoral work, it is also more of an expense. We've been able to build a wide array of supporters of implementing ranked choice voting in Santa Clara County, including the Leagues of Women Voters of Santa Clara County, the Mercury News, BAMEC, business leader John Sobrato, the Santa Clara County Democratic Party, Silicon Valley Young Dems, and a number of elected officials and organizations across the county. I'm now going to pass it over to Peter to talk a little bit about what we found in terms of legality.
Thank you, Sean. My name is Peter Bouts, and along with my colleague Amber Trincato, who I believe is listening in right now, we are from Hogan Lovells, and we represent Fair Vote, one of the members of the ranked choice voting community and organizers here. We're here to make a few arguments about the legality of ranked choice voting for a county, charter county. So we went through and did some research of our own to determine what we could about the legality of ranked choice voting. I think everyone, on the legal side would be in agreement that charter counties don't have the same powers as a charter city does in terms of election authorities. However, the question really is, are you authorized by the California Constitution or by state statute to do this? And we would point to the California Constitution, Article 11, Section 4, where we see that the county charter say that they shall provide for the election or appointment, compensation, terms, and removal of county officers. We go to the next slide. We have found legal authority which backs up basically everything besides sort of the election point within that language of the statute that suggests that, for instance, a county can vary the power of removal. And the case that's cited here, the California Court of Appeals said that a county could change removal provisions from a recall election to a 4/5 vote of the Board of Supervisors. Similarly, you can vary the manner of selecting or appointing county officers, which this county of Santa Clara has decided to do itself for a number of years. The California legislature, when passing SB 212, the most recent ranked choice voting attempt to legalize ranked choice voting, and its proposed adoption of ranked choice voting said it would not bind charter counties, among others, which would seem to be a pretty strong indication that the legislature does not believe that they could control ranked choice voting for charter counties. And finally, we would note that San Francisco, which is both a charter city and a charter county, uses both ranked choice voting for both its city elections as well as for its county elections. So all this is to say, basically, there is a pretty strong evidence, we think, and strong arguments to be made that the county could adopt ranked choice voting legally. Now, of course, as we say, there's pretty strong arguments here, but there's always some risk of litigation and always some risk when you're a trailblazer, which Silicon Valley is no stranger to. There's always a lot of risk involved. And there's some risk of litigation, and there's some risk, I think as county council has pointed out, that you may face a lawsuit that could challenge the decision because there is no single case saying, yes, you can do this, the same way there is no case that says you can't do this. And because of that, our argument would be that in this uncertain area, if the county has the legal questions, it may wish to instruct county council to ask the Attorney General's office of the state of California to provide an opinion, which, while not a court opinion, would provide solid grounds for the county to move forward if it has a legal question about whether it could or could not do this as a matter of law.
That is it for our presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dugar and Mr. Bouts for your presentation. Clerk, how many speakers do we have?
We have 7 requests to speak.
Okay, so let's do 2 minutes each.
All right, we'll set the timer for 2 minutes. The next speaker is David Newswanger. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak, and the timer will start when you begin speaking.
This is David Newswanger from Sunnyvale. Can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
I'm just calling to offer my support for the ranked choice voting as presented in the presentation. That's all. Thank you.
The next speaker is Mickey Winkler. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Thank you. I too want to support the presentation made by Sean and Peter, and I hope that we will be the leaders and establish the right of charter counties to have ranked choice voting by your vote today. Thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you. The next speaker is Diane Harrison. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Hi, yes, I'm Diane Harrison. I live in Santa Clara, and I strongly support ranked choice voting. One comment I haven't heard is I think it'll save the county a huge amount of money because every election costs a lot of money. And so if you can, and ranked choice voting has also been called instant runoff voting, meaning basically you don't need a runoff, as they pointed out in the presentation. So that's going to save one election every single time. And I've actually, if case anybody is at all confused about how it would work, I have a one-page presentation that I created some time ago with sort of fake candidates. If anybody wants to look at that, I can email it to people, or I can show it on my screen if I have time to do that. But it would be nice to have an actual majority vote for elect each candidate instead of a plurality. And we have a lot of pluralities, at least in our city. So I don't know if you want to see that sheet, or have you seen enough presentation? Yes, no?
Yeah, no, I think we're fine for the presentation. Thank you very much, Diane. I appreciate your comment. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
The next speaker is Ava Chow. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ava Chow. I'm a resident of Cupertino. I'm also Democratic Central Committee member of AD 28, which is the new AD 26. Good afternoon, supervisors, Lee and Travis. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I support ranked choice voting, and I hope that both of you will be in support of it today. One of the reasons I want to iterate is that ranked choice voting increases racial, ethnic, gender, and socioeconomic and sexual orientation and expression amongst diversity among elected representatives. Our county is extremely diverse, and we should have elected officials that represents the community. It also encourages candidates to run positive campaigns against policy debates, not personal attacks, which unfortunately still runs rampant amongst today's campaigns. And we want to encourage young leaders or rising leaders to run for office, and ranked choice voting will allow them to, without being labeled as spoilers or straw candidates. And ensures office holders are elected by majority through the rank voting process. On average, with past ranked voting, 70% of people rank the winning candidates as their top 3 choices in ranked choice voting elections. Ranked choice voting makes our democracy more democratic. Please vote in support of ranked choice voting. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Tom Sharon. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You'll have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Hi, this is Tom Sharon. I am a resident of Milpitas. I support ranked choice voting for the county because it effectively increases turnout by making the November election the one that really matters, as opposed to the primary. And as mentioned by Sean Dugar, the speaker a few minutes ago, this especially impacts underrepresented groups of voters. Research shows that people of color and women tend to run more and win more in places that use ranked choice voting. There's a great report from an organization called Represent Women that has studied the impact of ranked choice voting on the Bay Area cities that are already using it. At the start of 2020, half of all mayors and nearly half of all city council members elected in cities that use ranked choice voting are women. And as of 2016, women held 59% of all the Bay Area offices elected by ranked choice voting, and people of color held 60%. We see this pattern happening not just in the Bay Area, but everywhere across the country that's using ranked choice voting. I believe that Santa Clara County deserves this great reform. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Janine Soderwood. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You'll have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Hi, my name is Janine Soderwood. I live in Santa Clara. I'd really like to see Santa Clara County switch to ranked choice voting. I definitely think it will be better to have a more efficient single election in November. And I also support all of the reasons that have been mentioned so far, in particular, having positive campaigning and not splitting the vote. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Alex Shore. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You'll have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Hey, Shannon and Matt. Hey, Supervisor Chavez and Supervisor Lee. I'm Alex Shore, constituent of Supervisor Ellenberg here in San Jose, and speaking to you as a community advocate today who supports ranked choice voting, thinks it will improve our democracy. You know, I was talking with a friend last night who's involved in the election work, and he said, I just don't get ranked choice voting. What is it? And I said, well, for you or me as a voter, we're just expressing preferences for people based on who we like more and who we like most. If you're anything like me, when you are talking to friends about where you're going to eat dinner that night, you don't say, I'm going to only eat Mexican food and I won't eat anything else. You might very often say, hey, I would love Mexican, but I'm open to Thai, and gosh, barbecue would be good too. And I just think that's how we operate as human beings, and that's how our democracy needs to operate, in a place of nuance and sophistication that allows people to say, hey, there are a lot of good people out there in the community who want to serve an elected office, and let's find the best one. And if the one, in my opinion, isn't the best, then there's probably someone else good out there too. And I think that system will really work. I think it will bring more positive, inclusive campaigns that will bring more candidates of a more diverse nature to the table. And I think it will just really strengthen democracy. So hopefully y'all can move this forward. As James Williams says, move it into the legislative priorities document and figure out this question, if we can in fact move forward without needing state authorization. It would be great to have Santa Clara County be a leader in our state on this issue. Thanks so much for your consideration.
Our next speaker is Steve Chesson. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You'll have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Thank you. My name is Steve Chesson. I'm a member of the Santa Clara County Citizens Advisory Commission on Elections, also known as CASE. And we were the ones that brought this item to FGOC back in January. But I'm speaking as an individual for myself right now. I note that state law requires that supervisorial vacancies are filled by an appointment by the governor. Yet our charter says that the Board of Supervisors can make that appointment or can call a special election to fill such vacancies. In fact, Supervisor Chavez was first elected to the Board of Supervisors in just such a special election to fill a vacancy created by the resignation of George Shirakawa Jr. Previous vacancies on the board have also been filled either by a special election that the Board of Supervisors called or by direct appointment by the Board of Supervisors. I would urge you to request an opinion from the Attorney General's office, as was suggested, to see if the same constitutional authority that gives our Board of Supervisors the ability to fill those vacancies also allows the county to use ranked choice voting. I note that there is no case law one way or the other on the ability of charter counties to fill their vacancies their own way, yet many charter counties do. I think the same logic would also apply to our use of ranked choice voting. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Michael Hunter. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Hey, thank you for calling me. I'm a registered voter in San Jose. I'd like to thank Supervisor Chavez, Supervisor Lee, and the other officials on the call for their time and their service to Santa Clara County. I am calling in support of ranked choice voting. I think that the meaningfulness and relevance of elections is a huge issue for our county and our society. And I know it's hard, there's effort and risk involved in adopting a new system, but I really think I encourage the council to make this a priority, make this something, or consider this something worth that investment. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mike Buchanan. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You'll have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Good afternoon, supervisors. I'm Mike Buchanan from Sunnyvale,
And Supervisor Chavez, I appreciate your emails. I'm also, of course, speaking in support of ranked choice voting. We've heard a lot of reasons why it would be good for the county, which is, of course, your focus should be the priority. Those include costs to the county, cost to candidates, better representation. But another reason I think to support ranked choice voting and implement it here is to set an example and prove it out here so that it can be adopted more places. Because I think if you look more broadly, even nationally, at how our political system is working, it's extremely divisive. It's hard for people to work together. People are jaded about politics. And I think a system like ranked choice voting really can improve that. A lot of the dysfunction we see in politics today comes down to our electoral system. And so obviously the focus should be on the county. I think it can help there, but I hope that you will also give some consideration to paving the way to really improving politics across the whole country. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Nassim Nouri. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You'll have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Thank you very much. My name is Nassim Nouri. I'm a 25-year resident of San Jose, and I want to thank Supervisor Chavez and Lee. Supervisor Lee is my representative, and I'm very thankful and proud that this issue has been brought up again. As a Green Party member, we know that ranked choice voting as well as proportional representations are much more democratic and equitable ways and methods of voting. And we believe these electoral reforms are essential for full representation of everyone who lives in our county and in our cities. I know that you have all witnessed many efforts in trying to get ranked choice voting into various cities. And I believe that if the county takes this issue up and actually implements it, it will benefit all of our cities. I want to strongly recommend that you vote for moving this forward and create a less divisive and less bitter process for our citizens to engage in voting, and also take a fiscally responsible step to reduce the cost of election and increase voter engagement. I want to thank all the organizations that have worked very hard on promoting and public education around both ranked choice voting and proportional representation. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Jordan Moldow. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You'll have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Thank you for having me. My name is Jordan Moldow. I'm an 8-year resident of Mountain View, recently moved to San Jose. I support ranked choice voting. A little more detail. I know when ranked choice voting gets discussed, occasionally people will say like, well, it's not perfect. There's this other voting method that's better. I acknowledge that there's no perfect voting method. They all have their pros and their cons. But I hope we can all agree that ranked choice voting is far superior to what we have now. Most voting methods would be superior to what we have now. And I think it's important to, take the goodwill that we have right now to implement something that's clearly better and not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. So I support ranked choice voting. The first past the post system is not very good for all the reasons that have been discussed so far. Additionally, I think our top 2 primary system isn't really that good either. When I first moved to California, it seemed great, but after a few elections, I realized like it really makes the November elections really difficult because you aren't necessarily going to have a very good choice in that final election, given how the primary plays out with its top 2 votes. Move on. You're not going to have very good political representation that way. So I think eliminating the primary is going to make the political representation in the final election much more meaningful, much less divisive. People will have more choices and they will be able to vote more in line with how they actually feel. And as a bonus, we get to save a lot of money and effort by eliminating the primary. So thank you for having me.
Next speaker is Benjamin Cooley. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You'll have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Hi, my name is Benjamin Cooley. I am a longtime resident of Santa Clara. I was actually on the Charter Review Committee when Santa Clara was looking at adopting various forms of electoral reforms, including ranked choice, which unfortunately did not go through. And thus, I've actually seen this conversation going on for quite a bit. And a lot of the problems in this have been the previous election system that we had wasn't able to support ranked choice. And there was a lot of effort that went into making sure that this new system that I believe came on a year ago or 2 years ago has all of these capacities. Ranked choice is a great first step to achieving a more fair and equitable election system. Ideally, at the end of the day, we actually want proportional voting, which is obviously something we should be working towards, but ranked choice is basically half of what you need to get there. With ranked choice, you end up with much less strategic voting in the system. And anyone who's ever seen people talk about strategic voting knows that it leaves a bitter taste in your mouth when you're like voting for someone who you don't actually want because you really don't like somebody else. It leads to really nasty electoral shenanigans, and it's not a benefit to anyone. So ranked choice pretty much eliminates that out the door. And the only real downside to ranked choice is the complexity of counting and explaining to voters what's going on when counting happens. Obviously, the Bay Area, we have very sophisticated voters and people who are not afraid of technology. So I do not believe that should turn us off to adopting a system that we know produces fairer, juster outcomes and more true to what voters actually want. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Neil Park McClintock. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You'll have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
Great. Hi, my name is Neil. I am the political director for Silicon Valley Young Democrats. And today I'd like to speak in support of ranked choice voting in Santa Clara County. It's not something that's new. It's been used since the 1850s. It was first used in the United States in 1915 in a city in Ohio. Ranked choice voting is great for the following reasons. It increases racial, ethnic, gender, socioeconomic, sexual orientation, etc. diversity among elected representatives. It encourages political candidates to run positive campaigns based on policy debates rather than personal attacks. It also encourages rising leaders, like young folks, to run for office without being branded as being a spoiler candidate. It ensures that office holders are elected by a true majority of voters through a ranking process, rather than through a minority of voters. Simply put, RCV ensures better and more diverse representation, more positive campaigns, the rhetoric we hear, and it also prevents gatekeeping for new emerging voices that want to make an impact in their community. For that reason, I would like to urge the committee and the Board of Supervisors to support ranked choice voting. Thank you very much.
And that concludes our request to speak.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And Supervisor Chavez, do you have any questions and comments you'd like to make regarding this issue?
So I see that James Williams has his hand up, and what I'd like to do is turn to James Otto first. And there are a number of issues that the speakers and the presenters raised. I think the most critical among them is our ability to fill the vacancy legally. And then the second is that I think Mr. Chesson raised the opportunity to ask the AG's office for their opinion, and I'm interested in understanding Mr. Williams' perspective on that.
Great, yeah. Ms. Williams, please proceed.
Yes, thank you. And I did want to address some of the comments in the presentation that was made, which is not something we normally do, but I think would be really helpful for both the committee's benefit and the public, because I want to be clear about a few things first, which is nothing in our analysis has to do with the merits of ranked choice voting. I just want that to be super, super clear to everyone. The question here is really one of what is the authority of a charter county to countermand otherwise applicable provisions of state law. And no one, I think, disputes, and we certainly haven't heard anyone dispute that the elections code currently requires a certain manner for voting. And so the question is really, can the charter have a provision that is at odds with that state law provision? And there are areas where city charters and county charters can do so, and there are areas where they can't. And I want to just walk through three of the concerns that have been raised, because I actually don't think this is a super close question. We always err on the side of county charter authority. This is not a matter of there's no case there, so we're saying, you know, be scared of risk. That's not how our office operates. What I'd like to do is I'm just going to bring up real quick some provisions of the California Constitution, because I think it's just helpful for people to look at. So the first thing I want to just address is the question of San Francisco. San Francisco is a charter city and a charter county, and the California Constitution says that that charter city powers supersede conflicting charter county powers. So San Francisco, as far as we're concerned for all of this analysis, is a charter city and just isn't a relevant analog. Charter city power is governed by Section 5 of Article 11 of the Constitution, and charter city authority is very clear that charter cities are competent to determine the manner in which, the method by which, the times at which, and the terms for which municipal officers are elected or appointed. And it's significant that the Constitution says the manner and method. That's specific language in Section 5 of the Constitution. That's for charter cities. And as we all know, a number of charter cities have adopted charter amendments authorizing ranked choice voting. By contrast, Section 4 of the California Constitution is what governs the authority of charter counties. The authority of charter counties is narrower than charter cities, and there's a lot of historical reasons for that, and this has been true even prior to the major revision of the Constitution in 1970. And that's because counties, unlike cities, counties are subdivisions of the state, and most of what we do is carry out and implement state operations. And so county charters have authority to change aspects of the organization of county government, but by and large, charter counties are still governed by general law, unlike the kind of more plenary authority that charter cities have. And you won't find in this section, even though charter counties can determine whether officers are elected or appointed, other than the sheriff, the DA, and the assessor who must be elected, you do not find language talking about the manner in which folks are elected. It's very different than language in Section 5. That difference is legally very significant because there's a rule, kind of core rule of statutory and constitutional interpretation, which is the rule against surplusage. But basically there's meaning behind the words that are different in Section 5 than the words in Section 4. But I also want to address this question of vacancies, because by contrast, Section 4 does specifically say county charters determine the manner of filling vacancies. And so it is competent for county charters to provide for that. Of course they do, as ours does. And so, you know, that issue just doesn't speak to the question at issue here. So we have looked at this question closely, and our recommendation to the committee is that it forward a recommendation to the board, if you're interested in pursuing ranked choice voting, to seek legislative authorization. I don't think this is a circumstance where requesting an AG opinion would be advised. And for a lot of reasons, including that I don't think an opinion would be helpful for the scope of charter authority in other contexts. And so it's just not something I'd recommend. But I do believe it's appropriate to seek legislative authority. It could be limited to Santa Clara County, and such a bill may find better success in the governor's office if it's, you know, a narrower proposal than a statewide one. That's our recommendation. We've provided more comprehensive analysis separately, and happy to answer other questions.
Thank you, James. Yes, Supervisor Travis, go ahead.
Thank you. I was just going to follow up and ask James this question about risk and any question that, and I'll just ask this through the chair, is if there is any of this presentation that you are recommending be considered in closed session before the board hear it, let me know that as I'm asking you these questions. But the question relative to risk, could you talk just a little bit about the implications of an election happening and us losing litigation over our ability to institute a new method of voting?
I'll speak at kind of a high level, and then I think it's probably best to kind of leave it at that. But I do not advise that elections are an area to engage in places where there may be significant constitutional or statutory risk, because as the committee knows, and as I think is generally known publicly, elections are high stakes. There's often litigation. There's often, especially in the current national context, it's not a space where, we go through great lengths, and I know the ROV would certainly agree with this. I know that their operation goes through great lengths to dot every I, cross every T, to try to ensure that election results and outcomes and structures and systems are done with the utmost integrity, but also in a way that is squarely within the corners of the elections code and all applicable federal, state, and local laws, given the kind of scrutiny that appropriately is placed on elections and the pivotal role that elections play in our democracy. So I would say that is kind of one point. And then a second one is, just speaking in terms of, charter county authority. I think there's thoughts that I could share that'd be more appropriate to share confidentially with the board.
Okay, and then through the chair, what I would ask is that if it's more appropriate for a full analysis to be shared with the board in closed session, I would appreciate if that happened prior to this coming to the full board for discussion and consideration. And then I have a separate set of questions, and that is for Shannon and Matt, potentially to put on the record, for the ability to engage in ranked choice voting, not necessarily at a county level, but if a city were to ask us to do ranked choice voting, or even us, how long would it take to put the system in place to allow for ranked choice voting to occur?
Well, I would say, Supervisor Chavez, I can't provide a specific answer as far as the exact number of weeks or months, and please feel free to chime in, Matt, if you would like to, when I'm done. There's going to be some factors that we would need to look at of what's involved. First, what size of city is it that is, or jurisdiction that's trying to move into another voting method. We have our recommended timeline that we gave. The preparation we did for you for this report on ranked choice voting was strictly for the county, not for a city, not for a school district, not for any other jurisdiction, but for this county. So there, again, various factors that we would want to look into and look at that. If we again gave our recommendation in this legislative file for the county on the time frame. So I couldn't really commit to what would it take for another jurisdiction timeline to implement without even looking into that. So kind of a long-winded answer that I don't have a specific answer for another jurisdiction. It need to be looked into. And Matt, would you like to add anything to that, or?
I think that you covered it pretty well. And just to say that obviously the benefits of having more lead time is that we can spend more time doing voter education and outreach and building partnerships and awarenesses. So, it would be a discussion with a particular jurisdiction that was looking at it in terms of the timeline, but we would caution, truncating that timeline too far could potentially risk compromising the quality of that voter education and therefore the success of the implementation. The other thing to say is that we did, the specific request that the FGOC had for the scope of our report was looking at implementing for like a primary and general election timeframe. So it would be different. It would be different and potentially shorter for a city or something that was looking at for a special election, because you wouldn't necessarily need to have the same level of messaging in advance of the primary as to like why are the local contests that the voters are expecting to see on the primary no longer on the primary. So that could potentially truncate the timeline a little bit, but we would still want to make sure that given the size of the jurisdiction, we had plenty of time for voter education and outreach.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks, Matt. Thank you, Chairperson. I see Dr.
Smith, yes, Dr. Smith, go ahead.
I wanted to expand a little bit on that question and answer. As was discussed by County Council, the only cities in our county that could actually do this would be charter cities. And San Jose is the largest, but there are others, Santa Clara, Sunnyvale. And the time period to be able to implement it would vary depending on the size of the city and the size of the ballot, as well as the other factors that were mentioned by Shannon. And they would be paid for exclusively by the city in question. So just wanted to make it clear to the public that would not be the county paying for those elections.
Thank you.
Okay, no further questions. Vice Chair Chavez, I'll go ahead and ask my questions. Thank you. So the first question I have actually with James is, you mentioned that there's a possibility of getting an opinion from the Attorney General, but you don't necessarily recommend it. I just want to understand, what is the process like? Is this something that your office would then basically, based on the board direction, to write to the Attorney General and present this question of fact, or question of law to the AG's office, and then they give an opinion?
Yeah, that's the process would be basically that, but I think that's something that I can communicate with the board about, and it can go into further depth around what legal risks that may pose to the county. So that's something I can do separately.
Okay, so that might have to go through closed session. I was thinking. Okay. So I guess I'm trying to find out if there's a way to ascertain the legality of this. If it's not the Attorney General's office, I guess it will be the courts. But is this something that, say, a party or the county, can we file some type of a declaratory judgment type of a case in the court to ask the judge to grant an opinion if it's not the Attorney General? That might hold more water.
That's a good question, especially because AG opinions are not binding in any event. But I think that's something that would also be more appropriate to discuss confidentially with the board.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right, and then the other question I have is also regarding I guess I don't think we have a lot of discussion regarding the reason why ranked choice voting is a good thing. I think every speaker that we had today basically speak toward that. I think the bigger question here really is in terms of the actual implementation specifically for the county, because we are such a interesting entity. Like the city, the county is a different entity and differently stated in the state constitution between the section 4 versus the section 5 of the constitution. I think this is where the difference is in terms of some of our responsibility and some of the things that we can and cannot do. I guess the question back to Shannon is if the proposal in the future comes from one of our 15 towns, well, it has to be chartered city. Let's say if some of the chartered cities actually come through with a passage or recommendation to do so. Is this something that the city council themselves could just pass, or does this have to go through the citizenry of that city in as a general election in order to adopt ranked choice voting in the future for a city?
The city would have to adopt it through a charter amendment, meaning it would have to be voted on by the people of the city.
Oh, okay. So this is not something that a majority vote of the city council can do it. This still has to go through to the people to change the charter.
Yes. Unless they already have a charter provision that authorizes their city council to take action.
Right. Okay, very good. And in this case for the county is that we already have a vote by the people from, over a decade ago. So as far as the charter is concerned, we already have something that says we can do it. But the bigger question now is the provision in the California Constitution. That's the one that is giving us the most concern. That's what we're talking about, right, James?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yes, go ahead. Sorry, Chavez.
Yeah, if you could follow up, James, on the vote that was taken by us and the implications of that, and to Supervisor Lee's point, whether or not state legislation, would have to be structured in a particular way because of the significance of that vote.
Sorry, can you just?
Well, what I think that when I spoke to you, one of the concerns you had was actually the structure of the vote that was taken by the county.
Oh, the language. Yeah. So yeah, I can talk a bit about the language of the charter amendment that we have. So the charter amendment that we have says basically that nothing else in the charter should be interpreted to restrict the ability to do ranked choice voting. And that's important because other provisions of the charter refer to the current structure of primary and general elections, but it's not the same as having a charter provision that purports to supplant state law. So that's a separate concern that would exist absent a change in state law.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. I would like to see if there's no more questions. I would like to try to see if we get a motion going here. So as Chavez, let me give a stab at this and see if we could live with this and move this forward. First of all, I just want to thank everybody who's presented today, and also our staff who's been working on this issue and also providing responses to myself and my staff this past few weeks on this important issue. I would like to move forward this item to the full board for the consideration. Request that the following to be completed or provided before coming back to FGOC for the further discussion. And that is to request that the county council to return with a proposed ordinance change that required the implementation of ranked choice voting. If we could somehow get a attorney general opinion that we have the authority to do so, or a court opinion that we can do so. In addition, I would like to request the administration add ranked choice voting to the county's legislative priorities and work with the community and other county partners to advance this legislation if it is introduced in the upcoming legislative session. And certainly would like to have this time considered for a closed session meeting before any moving this item to the full board, as Supervisor Chavez suggested.
Otto, I'm so sorry that I missed the beginning of your motion. I lost you at the very beginning. So do you want to just say again what you're trying to do here?
I'll try to state that specific part. Is basically is to request the county council to return with a proposed ordinance change that would require the implementation of ranked choice voting for the county elections if we were able to obtain a attorney general or court opinion that we have the authority to do so.
So so we were just advised that we would not we were just advised that would not be advisable to obtain an AG's opinion. But you're asking for a court action, and that's
So one or the other. Yeah, basically, is I don't want to be calling the try to figure out exactly what is the proper legality. I don't think neither one of us is the right person to determine that. And at the end of the day, I think it is going to be the court probably. But I certainly think that being the Attorney General, I think that opinion could be certainly persuasive. But I'm not necessarily sure that's a final decision at the end of the day. So I just wanted to leave that up to the county council to figure out how we could actually get that determined. And then when that's been determined and that we can do it, we certainly want to proceed with this ordinance change. That's what I was trying to recommend to do. And then the other one, the second part of it is to state that if we can't do that, at least we add it to the legislative priorities to make sure that we have legislation moving forward to advance this in the future.
So I see that James has raised his hand.
Yes, go ahead, James.
Yeah, maybe I can make a suggestion, and that might be to forward the item to this item to the full board,
right.
And ask our office to provide the board with in the appropriate forum analysis on these questions, including related to our recommendations on seeking an AG opinion, so that the board can benefit from that briefing before kind of ordering up any specific ordinance.
Okay,
that'd be a recommendation.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Let's do it step by step. This is a multi-step thing, but I could live with that. Is that okay with you, Supervisor Chavez?
Yes, that makes sense. And I think just I'm going to say what's obvious, and that is that we would have an opportunity to get that briefing prior to any action coming to the board. So we would essentially be forwarding to the board an agenda item that would in fact be influenced by whatever that closed session is. So I think, Otto, what that means is we would be forwarding to the board without recommendation, pending the opportunity to get more information in the appropriate setting, as James suggested. I'm going to suggest that actually be closed session, based on the fact that Supervisor Lee is requesting a potential declaratory relief. I'm not sure exactly the language used, but potentially the opportunity to engage either the Attorney General or the courts directly. And so given that, I think that then means that closed session is appropriate. And so I would second that motion, Supervisor Lee.
Thank you. Good observation. Thank you, Chavez, for that amendment, and I certainly agree. Okay, clear as mud, right?
Right.
Okay, good. All right. If no further discussion, well, let's take the vote.
Vice Chairperson Chavez.
Yes.
And Chairperson Lee.
Yes, as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the report only has been received, and this will be moving to the full board and also in the closed session setting. All right, and moving to the next item, we moved up item number 13 earlier, which is the received report from the Office of Sustainability relating to establishment of resiliency framework to strengthen infrastructure systems and operations of county-owned managed facilities. And I believe we have Jasneet from our Office of Sustainability, Sharma, here.
Yes, good afternoon, Supervisor Lee and Supervisor Chavez. I'm Jasneet Sharma, Director for the Office of Sustainability. And I'm also accompanied today by Jeff Draper, Director for Facilities and Fleet, for this report back. In today's report, we wanted to present a resiliency framework for the committee's consideration to strengthen infrastructure systems and operations against climate-related impacts at county-owned and managed facilities, prioritizing critical facilities first. As you'll see in the report, the proposed framework primarily includes 3 phases: a climate vulnerability and risk assessment, long-term adaptation planning, and an implementation and monitoring plan as well. An effort to pilot this framework is currently underway as part of the continuity of operations and resiliency study for the 3 county hospitals. The goal of the study is to mitigate future power disruptions due to climate impacts at county hospitals, and it also includes long-term climate adaptation planning in the scope through a comprehensive vulnerability assessment of the facilities and an accompanying menu of adaptation strategies. So staff today seek input and recommendations on the framework that are discussed in this report. I'd also like to include or invite Jeff Draper if he has any additional comments to make.
I would just say that simply, Jasny and the committee, that we would include other essential facilities such as our detention facilities across the spectrum, if you will, and of course our county comm and any other critical command and control facilities.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Draper. Let me just see if I would go ahead and see if there's any members of the public that would like to speak on this item.
There are no requests to speak.
All right, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Supervisor Chavez, do you have any comments or questions on this item? Oops, I think we might just have lost Supervisor Chavez for a second here. I'll give it maybe I'll go ahead and ask my question first, and then we'll go back to Supervisor Chavez. First of all, I would like to thank the staff for bringing this forward. In the legislative file, the report stated that the ongoing funding request will be submitted as part of the annual budget process, and the county executive will consider these requests with other competing requests for recommended budget. I just want to make sure that the administration understands the true urgency and necessity of this planning work to continue our basic operations. And because of this, I certainly would like to make sure that this is also at the top of our list when we look at our funding priorities. Does that make sense? The staff?
It does to me, Supervisor.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me see if we have Supervisor Chavez back. I don't see her. I think she might have stepped away. So if that's the case, what we might do, since there's only 2 of us here, we would have to vote. And what I could do is I could table the vote for this motion until Supervisor Chavez is back. So we'll hold on to this item for the time being and move on to the next item on the agenda. And the next item on the agenda I have is item number 7. Am I correct, Colin? Which is the
Yes, item 7 is the item that we would go back to. Yes.
Okay. Oh, good.
And
okay. Yes. Hi. So we were just finishing item number 13 regarding the report from the Office of Sustainability regarding the resiliency framework. Just want to see if you have any questions and comments.
I thought this was exactly what I was looking for, Jasneeth. I wanted to say thank you to you and the staff, and thanks. And I really appreciate the collaboration you have with Mr. Draper and his team. So this is the right direction. Thank you.
All right, and is there a motion to accept the report?
So moved.
Now
We need a motion? Okay, so moved.
To receive report, yes, and I'll second it. Let's take the vote.
Vice Chairperson Chavez.
Yes.
And Chairperson Lee.
Yes, as well.
Thank you.
Now we can move to item number 7, which is the receiving the management audit of the Office of Public Defender and provide direction regarding its recommendations. And to present here, I believe, is Cheryl.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you. And for the record, I'm Cheryl Solov. I'm the Management Audit Manager for the Board of Supervisors. And to present our short presentation is Mara Bybee, who was the project manager. We can't hear you, Mara. Okay.
Yeah, we have
Let's-
audio from Mara here. I can see her moving her lips. but-
Yeah, let me see if we can fix this.
Supervisor Lee, while they're working on that, may I just give you a little bit of background and history on this particular audit?
Absolutely, please, go ahead, Vice Chair Chavez.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to say, Supervisor Lee, that in 2019, I requested this audit. And the reason is that I was very interested in making sure that the Public Defender's Office was properly staffed and really had the support and resources it needed. And so what I wanted to do today was make sure that we had a clear understanding of the, what Cheryl's staff is recommending and what our public defender is recommending. There were some areas that I just wasn't exactly clear on the back and forth, and wanted to make sure we understood that, as I think this has really important implications for the work we're doing in our whole public safety and justice system work. So thank you. I just wanted to make sure I shared that with you.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Chavez. Background, yes, Cheryl, have we
And
been able to fix that?
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I'll just go through this briefly and then we can move to the matrix or answer any questions that you may have. So this audit was conducted in conformity with the Yellow Book, which is the federal audit standards, and it was published in January of 2022. By way of background, in fiscal year, the Public Defender's Office had an adopted budget of 73 million and a total full-time equivalent staff of 284 personnel, including 242 members of the Public Defender's Office and 42 members of the alternate defender. Our findings, excuse me, our findings include that, sorry, I'm getting over an illness. We had 8 findings and 40 recommendations, which focused on tracking staff workload, client financial eligibility and screening for public defender office services, pre-arraignment representation and review services, automated delivery of case management data from criminal justice information control system, connecting high-risk clients with county services, appropriate use and oversight of investigative technology, tracking discovery requests, increasing the frequency of staff evaluations. The audit had 40 recommendations. The public defender agreed with all 36 of the 36 recommendations directed to their office. The technology services and solutions department agreed with 1 recommendation directed to their department. The Office of County Counsel partially agrees with the 1 recommendation directed to their office and 1 recommendation concerning allocating additional staff to the Public Defender Office pre-arraignment representation and review team is directed to the Board of Supervisors. And that concludes our presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. And I also have with me Mara Vibey and other members of our team.
Great, thank you. Vice Chair Chavez, would you like to hear public comments first before we ask questions?
Yes, I wanted to hear public comment, and I also wanted to see if there was anything our public defender wanted to add.
Oh, good, okay. Hi, I see our public defender, Molly O'Neill, is there. Hello, good afternoon, Molly. Do you have anything to add, please?
Good afternoon, Chairperson Lee and Vice Chairperson Chavez. I would just make a couple comments and let you both know that I have an army of people here to help answer questions if you have them. I wanted to thank the Management Audit Division for their cooperation in working with our department and their patience in dealing with some of the information we were not able to provide because of attorney-client privilege reasons. it was also a very challenging and strange time to have an audit done in that we were in the middle of COVID. And so operations were not, generally speaking, normal, but they were very flexible in kind of speaking with us and dealing with us. A couple of things that have changed that I wanted to comment on are our caseloads because of the court backlog, which has to do in part with COVID and in part with court staffing shortages and sheriff department staffing shortages has really grown and impacted both our office and the DA's office, as well as other criminal justice partners. So our felony caseloads have essentially doubled, and they're not moving either. It's very difficult to get a trial department if you're not in a time not waived speedy trial status. So that's resulted in challenges for our trial teams, and we have had kind of a correlation of staff leaving for various COVID related reasons, some to write the great novel, some to go work in a 2-person office in South Lake Tahoe. But I've been public defender now for over 10 years, and I've not ever seen retention problems like we're having. And that is in part related to, if you will, existential crises related to COVID, and also the difficulty of doing the job at this point. So I could go on, but I won't. I will. I'm sure that you all have questions, and I have myself as well as my entire admin team and our supervising investigator and paralegal supervisors and our management analyst here to answer questions. And if I could just say one more thing related to the audit, we realized in the process of being asked questions about our operations that we do not have sufficient data analytics staff. So that's definitely an area where, because increasingly the board would like more metrics from us, county exec's office would like more metrics. Dashboards are being put together. We're trying to be responsive to community groups that would like to know more about our metrics. So that's another area where we could use some help, and we recognize that as a result of the audit process. So I'll stop there and see if we can answer some questions for you.
Great, thank you very much, Molly. Colin, do you have any public who would like to speak on this item?
There are no requests to speak.
Okay, I'll go ahead and close the public speakers portion. And Supervisor Chavez, do you have any questions on this, please?
Well, I just have a couple of kind of broad directions, and I want to see if they work for everyone. And just I want to just verify what Cheryl said, Molly, just to make sure we're all on the same page. Cheryl made the point that all 36 recommendations were agreed to by the public defender's office. And that's accurate?
Yeah, yes. I mean, we had a lot of back and forth in terms of particularly in section 1 related to workload and caseload, where we clarified information they thought that we thought they did not have correct. So, and there are some areas related to social workers and frequent flyer clients where we've made some commentary that says, yes, that's a good idea, but we are sort of already doing that in different ways. So we had a lot of conversation as we made our way to consensus.
Well, let me just share just an overall perspective on that. What I found a little confusing is that the staff, Cheryl's recommendations are clear, and the responses are not as, like, they're not as clear, like yes, and here's how we're going to do it, or no, and here's how we're going to do it. So I just want to make a recommendation. One is that I'm going to make a motion that we adopt the all of the recommendations by the management audit team. And again, Public Defender O'Neill did really based on the fact that there was a yes or a yes but in almost all of them. And I get it because you were talking about it's COVID, there was a lot going on, and so I'm understanding all that. But what I want to see is that we adopt the recommendations, and then I want to recommend that we have a 3-month check-in on the implementation plan for them. And the reason for that, Molly, is I think one of the points that you just raised that is really critical is about the your analyst capacity. And I think only by digging in on all of the recommendations are you going to figure out what your needs are relative to how to support the work that you're talking about. You just raised one that I think makes a ton of sense, but it's not really clearly reflected in the overall document, which is why I'm going to suggest that there be a 3-month report, so that we adopt 3-month check-in, and at that time, Molly, that you and the auditor have a chance to talk before that meeting so that we better understand as part of the report back, what are the emerging needs that you see based on that body of work that you're starting to dig into. That would be my motion.
Yes, and I'll go and second that. As well, I also like to get a better sense of how to support the Public Defender's Office in implementing some of these recommendations and tracking the progress of the work that has been done. So, for example, in recommendations 3.1 to 3.4, based on the audit team's recommendations, the county should look to add additional staff to the PAR team. The recommendation states that the need for additional 2 full-time attorneys, 1 full-time paralegal and investigator, and 1 full-time social worker. Molly, can you help explain further on what the current need is for the PAR team? And would adding those positions mentioned be enough to be fully staffed?
Yes, thank you, Supervisor Lee. I'm going to ask Assistant Public Defender Charlie Hendrickson to chime in, but I believe what he's going to say is that our needs have adjusted somewhat since the time of the issuing of the report, and that what we really need more of now is attorneys. So I'll hand it over to Charlie, as that's his area of oversight.
Thank you, Molly, and thank you, Chairperson Lee. Yeah, so we're really proud of the work that our PAR team has done. And predominantly, I think people understand that we are doing for the first time with this program is we're engaging clients prior to arraignment so we can better understand their situation in the community, so that when we appear at arraignment with them for the first time, we can make more robust presentations about their orientation in the community and help fashion safe releases for them in the community. So the idea is to reduce incarceration and number of days of detention for individuals, but do so with a lot of thought and connectivity with them. Our team is doing that. There are other services which we think are related to that, which are incredibly important. One is we're not yet reaching 100% of our felony in custody clients, which is really the goal of the program. We're still well below that, although we're growing. Okay, so I think we're doing really well for a young program. So that's one thing. We need more attorney staff simply to do more of the engagement. It would also be helpful if we had better virtual access to those clients. We think we've developed through this program really good collaborative working relationships with the sheriff's office and the deputies that help us access our clients. But it's really, from our perspective, it should be a county driven solution with TSS to improve virtual connectivity with our clients. The other thing I would say is that in addition to just simply engaging those clients pre-arraignment, it's also about bringing other parts of the public defender service to them, which right now is a little bit difficult for us. One thing we do is after talking to our clients, we then go out and engage family members, community support to understand what the family's perspective is on the client situation, and hopefully bring them into the court or a representation of the court about their situation with family to help provide support that can sometimes fashion a release that's safe. So we're doing that. The things that I think we're not doing, which I want to do more of, which would require more staff, would be to initiate early investigation for cases in which that's warranted. If somebody talks to us and says, hey, look, you've got the situation wrong, the police failed to investigate or talk to some witnesses, it would really sort this whole thing out much more rapidly. We'd like to do more to involve with our attorneys and investigators that early investigation piece. We think that's very important. Right now, we're doing it, but not in as robust a way as we would like. The other part of that, which I think is really important, which we're not doing as much of right now, but which I'd like to grow into, is early advocacy with the district attorney's office on charges. To say if we've talked to our client and talked to family members or witnesses and we think we have information which could help kind of sort the situation, should we say, then we would go out and engage the district attorney and say, hey, look, let's have a discussion before we all get too far down the road on this case. We think there's a lot of opportunity for that. We're also very encouraged by the fact that the DAs have initiated their CAMP program. And they have a supervisor, Brandon Cabrera, who is now dedicated in part to being the liaison for our PAR team. So we think that there's now the natural linkage there to do this work. So, and then there's a couple other things we'd like to do. We'd also like to do probation and parole advocacy to get those holds released for clients who are perhaps rolled up on fairly de minimis things, but it initiates a probation hold that doesn't necessarily need to be there. So those are areas in which we want to grow the program, which we think will, make it more effective overall and provide better service to our clients.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ms. Hendrickson. This is very helpful. Regarding the issue of the TSS virtual connectivity, you're saying that you would like to request the county to initiate that with TSS to see how we can improve that service?
Yeah, so during COVID, for the first time, our office working with TSS in the jail initiated tablets at the jail, I should say. Right. And we, I think, donated from our fund of tablets, I think 36 or 40 tablets. And Sarah McCarthy, who may be on this call somewhere, can talk about that at much more length because she's the one that initiated and set that up. What we've found with that is that it works, but we think that it's not really sufficient to serve the county needs because it's not just us that requires virtual connectivity with our clients. It's also behavioral health, it's probation, it's pretrial services. A lot of those organizations are now trying to kind of piggyback on the programs that we've set up, and we're getting a little bit of a bottleneck on that. So it seems like there's a need that the county pays a lot of money for people who are really smart and really dedicated to provide all these services to the clients, but there's a bottleneck at access for some of them. So I think we could get more bang for our buck, so to speak, out of the wonderful people at behavioral health and probation and pretrial services if they had simpler, readier access to folks in custody that they're trying to serve, and it would also help us. So we think it's that's something that should be kind of taken over from a county perspective because it really involves multiple agencies trying to get this connectivity.
Okay. So if that's the case, so Chavez, in addition to your motion, I would like to ask to amend it to include also to direct administration to utilize TSS to connect with Public Defender's Office to see how we could find ways to relieve this bottleneck access issue of the different departments, including behavioral health, pretrial services, as stated earlier. Is that acceptable?
Yes, and I see Dr. Smith has raised his hand as well.
Oh, okay, Dr. Smith, go ahead.
Yeah, I would ask you to leave out that last part. This is the first I've heard of this issue ever, and usually operational issues are dealt with in a comprehensive evaluation. We have many projects that are ongoing with TSS. We'll sit down with the Public Defender's Office and see what their issues are, but I don't think this is the right forum to decide exactly what the operational impact should be. We usually do operational discussions in administration, so I'm disappointed that I've only heard about this today. And usually department heads know that if they're requesting new resources or new projects, that goes through the administrative process. So I'd ask that you not include that last part, and we'll sit down and talk with them.
I see Molly, your hand's up as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, yes, thank you, Supervisor Lee. And I just wanted to say that we have actually brought this up previously to your staff, Supervisor Lee, and at meetings. And we have had some conversations with TSS. What's happened is we have gotten repeated requests because we deal with scheduling use of the tablets for people who are incarcerated. So for example, the dependency advocacy group would like to use it. The IDO wanted to be able to access their clients' probation, behavioral health. So we have indeed brought it up at public meetings previously, and I apologize, Dr. Smith, if you were not aware of it, but we have had some conversations previously, so it's not new. And we can certainly hear from Assistant Public Defender Sarah McCarthy, who is the person who spearheaded the standing up of the tablets in the jail in the first place in the middle of COVID, if that would be helpful to hear from her.
Well, Public Defender O'Neill, I think you know that bringing something up to board staff or in a public meeting is not an administrative request or something. So I'd encourage you to go through the appropriate administrative structure, because I don't think that the public defender knows what behavioral health needs or wants. So I think we can take this offline and figure it out.
And I see Cheryl Soloff, your hand is up.
Yes, I just wanted to ask for clarification on the motion. I just want to make sure. Are you
Cheryl,
looking?
can we come back to that in just a moment?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Supervisor Lee. I mean, I think two things. One is that the issue about the access on the, in custody for people having access to tablets and to the issues about connectivity are issues that have come up in a number of forums. And Dr. Smith, I appreciate the point you're raising about the internal infrastructure, but frankly, this is not the first time that I've heard this. And so separate of the administrative process, I do want to say that I think it's important that issues like this do get raised so that the board's expectations as to how services are working or not working, that there's a level of understanding on our end about that as well. So I'm not discounting the internal process. I just wanted to share that I think particularly given the particularly just given the COVID challenges we were having, that I do think that some of this has not kind of shaken out in terms of what's the regular or appropriate intervention in some of these areas. And I see your hands up.
Yes, I see Dr. Smith. Do you have something else?
Well, I would just say that we can solve any problem, but we can't solve some problems in committee. And I meet on a regular basis with the public defender who's never brought this issue up to me. So I think we need to sit down administratively and figure out what the problem is and involve the other departments that were concerned. We've got a backlog of $100+ billion or million of IT projects. The place to set priorities for IT projects is not at committee without the understanding of all the other priorities that exist. So I would just suggest that if you're going to direct anybody to do anything, direct the public defender who works for you to sit down with staff and find a successful conclusion to this discussion.
Anything else, Ms. O'Neill?
Yes, thank you. I would just make a final point, and I would be delighted to get at trying to have a conversation about this in any way that the board and Dr. Smith deems to be appropriate. But I just want to make one point, and that is that we already have fairly good access to our clients because of the tablet setup that happened during COVID. This is really a request to improve outcomes for clients, not for public defender resource augmentation, through better access to the same clients for other agencies. So I would look forward to having the conversation. And I apologize, Dr. Smith, if I hadn't brought it up to you. I have had many, many conversations about it with various departments, including TSS. And we were bringing it up, not really as much to look for funding, but to have a discussion about it. So we are looking to help the clients have better outcomes through better access to them by other agencies. We already have pretty good access. Thank you.
And then I think, Otto, just to say this, the reason I want to make sure that there's an environment that this environment is a free one for people to raise issues. And I hear, Dr. Smith, your point about process, and we want to be respectful of that, but I also don't want anybody watching or listening to be fearful of raising issues, especially when we're talking about audits, because they are, by their very nature, uncomfortable and painful, as I'm sure everybody who's been audited can attest to. So to go back, Supervisor Lee, Cheryl was asking us about the overall motion, and my motion was to accept all of the recommendations from the management audit and to have a report back in 3 months so that we might better understand what additional needs there might be in order to implement all of the recommendations. And the one I'm most interested in is obviously the tracking of the caseloads so that we can better determine what needs are.
Yep.
That was
yeah,
my
I was gonna
motion.
second that. So yeah, no issues on that motion. Okay, is there any further comments? If not, go ahead. Let's take the vote.
I just want to see, Cheryl, was that clear enough?
Oh, I'm just wondering if you're asking for a joint report or a report from. Okay, that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification, Cheryl. Appreciate it. All right, go ahead and take the vote.
All right, and there are no requests to speak. Vice Chairperson Chavez.
Yes.
And Chairperson Lee.
Yes, as well.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Now they finished item 7. Next one, I believe, is item number 9. Receiving report from the ESA Employee Services Agency relating to recruitment and classification performance metrics. All right, and I believe our director of ESA, John Mills, is here.
Yes, here I am, Chairperson Lee and Vice Chairperson Chavez. Thank you very much. As you mentioned, Chairperson Lee, the item before the committee is our annual report on our performance metrics in recruitment and classification. Just very briefly, the recruitment metric that is highlighted in the report that we are tracking is referring candidates within 90 days of receiving a requisition to fill a vacancy. The percentage of recruitments meeting that standard has steadily increased over the past 3 fiscal years as depicted in the report. We also provide a status update on our classification studies case management system implementation within an implementation target date of the first quarter of calendar year 2023. So that's right around the corner, and we're very excited about that. In addition, we provide our employee exit survey data that was collected between June and November of this year, with the caveat that our low response rate makes drawing conclusions from the data somewhat problematic. And finally, we provide a snapshot of our customer satisfaction survey data trend, which continues to move in the right direction. And with that overview, I'm available to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you. So first, do we have any public who would like to speak on this item?
There are no requests to speak from the public, but Jeff Smith does have his hand up.
Okay, I'll go and close the public hearing. And yes, Dr. Smith.
Oh, you're on mute, Jeff.
I just wanted to ask John if the board members have been given access to the business information system so they can track all of that themselves.
I believe they have. I can double check that though, because I believe that was something that we discussed when this report had been heard previously. And so I believe that all of the board members have received access to our dashboards, but I can confirm that. And if not, make sure that they do have access.
Well, maybe I can ask the chairperson, have you seen the business information data online?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure everybody has access to it because it is rich with vacancy data, turnaround data, all of the recruitment data and everything. So I'm very proud of the ESA team for developing it, and I think we should show it off a little bit.
I agree. I think that's exactly right. Can I ask a
Yes, please
question?
go ahead, Supervisor Chavez.
I wanted to talk about, first of all, I think the exit interviews were really interesting. And I wonder if Dr. Smith and John, if you have any perspectives on them. And what I just mean is from an analytical perspective, what you're thinking is about the folks, leaving the county and the reasons.
I mean, so I'll start, and Jeff, feel free to chime in if you have anything additional to add. I guess I will say again that given our very low response rate of only 11%, out of the 1,474 employees that left the county during the survey period, we only had 11% respond. So that does make drawing conclusions a little bit questionable, I would say, without a more robust sample size. But that being said, of course, the survey data does give us some indication of where employees who are actually leaving to go to another either employer or education or some other commitment, sort of where they are going to, and the sort of distribution, at least among that survey group, of where they're going, separate and apart from the employees who are retiring. And you mentioned also the reasons for leaving. It's interesting. Some of the reasons are sort of rather perfunctory or routine, and others of the reasons are, I guess I would say, a little bit discretionary on the part of the employee, and it might bear a little bit more sort of conversation with that individual employee to get some insight as to why they may be leaving for that sort of more reason that's more kind of their opinion about what's going on, as opposed to I'm just leaving because.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I was thinking about is I think that that we ought to think about whether or not it makes sense for us to do. Is this done through a third party, John?
No, actually, it's done as part of the offboarding process. So, when an employee leaves county employment, there's a sort of number of forms and various paperwork that they need to complete. And so we've incorporated the exit survey into basically the offboarding process. And it is voluntary for the employee to complete.
for sure. I think one thought that I have is that I don't know if you ever had a survey done where you're like in a shopping mall, this would be like 25 years ago, and you'd get like a $25 gift certificate for, if you spent an hour with somebody, like for the mall, whatever, food court. But I think it would be worth us considering whether or not there is value in getting a third party. So it's somebody that, so people would have they're not going to be worried about coming back or recourse or anything else, and doing some sort of a small gift card or something like that, because I think it's worth us digging in to some of these issues more. And I just want to give an example where it says, commute and telework capability. What's interesting to me is those two are probably hand in glove, right? Like if you have to commute a long ways, being able to work from home may be of benefit. Now, it may not be appropriate in the type of job that you have, but all of that would just be worth us understanding, so that as we're thinking about how we want to evolve as a workplace, this is like a really good way of, of understanding data for people who, if their interests are protected, there's no reason for them to not be as forthcoming as necessary. And then I was also looking at the issue around career advancement and then the lack of skill or career development. When you take those separately, they're not significant. I mean, they're large, but if you add them together, that's a really significant number. And that's worth us, again, diving into, because, that may be something, again, we want to think about as an employer in terms of retention. So those were just two that I thought were very interesting. And I also thought the other component of, what their work experience was so interesting. So in any case, I'm not saying we should do it all the time, but to get to that, like once a year, just sort of scooping up another couple hundred people would be, I think, very beneficial to us.
So you asked for my opinion also?
Yeah, absolutely, Jeff.
I think the low response rate does encourage us and indicates that we should do more outreach, probably post separation by, like you said, in private firm or somebody else doing a survey. I think this does, however, this information does give us some evidence that we can work on. I think the question of dissatisfaction with leadership and the issue of work environment tend to go together. And, since these were people who retired or separated from multiple departments, it's hard to figure out what, exact department they're referring to, so we need to delve into that. I agree that probably having lack of skill and career development separate from career advancement is a confusing message. What do they mean by that? I think we need to delve down into that a little bit more. Same thing with commuting and work environment and telework capacity. So these were intended to be the beginnings of a separation survey. And I think the most important thing it told us is that we need to look deeper into the information with a larger population and delve down into the different parts of the answers.
Jeff, yeah, that's super helpful. And I think the point you raised too is another really interesting one, just about, to your point, if you could look at a big enough number, it would again give you some trends that maybe we're not seeing now. And then one other question that I have, and I don't know if there's another place you track this, but I'm curious about it. Are we averaging the appropriate number of people who are retiring? I mean, meaning, like, have we seen a jump in retirement, or is that sort of staying the same? People leaving, like.
Asking me, yeah, we're seeing a jump. we're definitely participating in the rush to retirement. And it's a significant problem, as you're well aware, because we lose quite a bit of institutional memory when we lose retirees at any age. And it means that we're spending a lot of our time bringing people up to speed, teaching them about the county processes. Things get dropped through the cracks, issues get ignored or unrealized. So it's a big problem.
And so we're kind of out where every other major corporation and organization is. We're part of the Great Resignation, and we're just going to we're seeing that. Okay. And
well, we're not quite as bad as most organizations, but since we're a county organization and thereby by definition much more complex than many organizations, because we have so many different lines of business and so many bureaucratic processes and so many interactions with other jurisdictions, even being less problematic numbers wise, it causes lots of problems operationally.
mm-hmm. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially given that some of these areas are really important but small, and others are really important and huge, like the hospitals versus environmental health. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the answers. This was it was a very helpful report. Thank you.
Thank you for the information, and I don't have any further question on this. Good job on the report and explaining what the these different reasons are. And if do I have a motion to receive report?
So moved.
Second it. Please take a vote.
Vice Chairperson Chavez.
Yes.
And Chairperson Lee.
Yes, as well.
Thank you.
Okay, we can move to item number 10 then, which is a consider recommendations relating to the establishment of debt service limit for the county. And I believe we have a few, let's see, I see Maria?
That's correct. Chair Lee and Vice Chair Chavez, Maria Oberg, Assistant Controller Treasurer with the Finance Agency. We have a very quick presentation for you that we'll go through, but as you know, Harvey Rose Management Audit did a special study of the county debt program a few months ago, and this is one of the recommendations that came from there, which is to establish a debt limit. So let me share my screen and hopefully I do this correctly. And are you able to see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes, you can.
I hope it's in a big format. If not, please let me know. I do think I clicked the right button here.
It's still in slide mode. Oh, there you go.
Okay, good. Yeah, sorry about the delay. But basically the objective is to establish and adopt a meaningful debt service limit that will take into account credit ratings as well as budgetary affordability, while still allowing the board sufficient flexibility to finance priorities that the board set. So I want to emphasize that today's presentation is more on the credit rating side because we are the Treasury division, and so budget affordability is not quite our expertise. But we are proposing two limits to revise into the debt policy. The first one is looking at the total debt service. So every single bond issuance that has the county's name on it, regardless of payment stream. We're proposing that debt service limit to be 8% of total governmental fund expenditures. We are also proposing a second limit, which looks more to the debt service that's actually paid by the general fund. For us, that's mainly our lease revenue bonds. And we're proposing that that limit be 8% of general fund expenditures. So how did we come up with this? Well, we looked at S&P, Standards & Poor's, which is the main rating agency that we use for most of our debt. And to qualify for the highest rating with them, you should be about 8% or less for your total governmental funds debt service as a percent of total governmental funds expenditures. And from there, it becomes a mathematical calculation to figure out the lease revenue bond debt service limit. We also looked, of course, at other California counties. I'm not going to go through the following 2 pages in detail because it's a lot, but basically there are 2 camps in California, and they depend a little bit on which rating agency is your main. So you'll see in this list of counties that some use the same denominator as we do. They look at their total general or total debt over total government fund expenditures. Others look at it over total governmental fund revenues. And the only difference is that S&P looks at expenditures, Moody's looks over revenues. So it's just a matter of which one you work the most with. You will also note that there are some counties still out there that do not have specific limits. For example, Contra Costa and Los Angeles, but they do have implicit debt limits. They will try to stay so that they get their best possible credit rating, which is similar to what we currently have in our policy. The 8%, if you want to see the historical debt ratios, how we have performed, so you can see we're well within the 8% on both measures. And that concludes my presentation, but I see Dr. Smith has his hand up.
Yes, Dr. Smith, go ahead.
Well, 2 things. I wanted to just say that when I publicly congratulate Maria, she was just appointed as the controller treasurer, not the assistant. She's
Not
one of our
yet.
stars.
Thank you,
She
Dr.
knows what
Smith.
she's doing, and I was really happy with her report. I want to congratulate her. And secondly, I just want to encourage the committee that we do have exemplary credit ratings, and much of that is because of our controller, treasurer's office, and finance department being on top of everything that we do. And you should be very proud of that credit rating. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Dr. Smith.
Thank you, Dr. Smith, and thank you, Maria, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's see. Do we have any public who would like to speak on this item?
There are no requests to speak.
Okay, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Supervisor Chavez, any questions you have on this item?
Yes, I do. So first of all, thank you, Maria, for the report. This was really helpful. And I just wanted to make sure I understood the last point that you raised about looking at expenditures versus revenues. Could you talk about why you wouldn't be looking at both?
You know, it's kind of an interesting philosophical question, right? So if you were in a private agency or private corporation, obviously profitability drives it, right? So if you look at their statements, they start with their revenues, then expenditures to get to a net position. Government is kind of backwards. We really look at what does it cost us to run the operations we need to run for our community. And so therefore that starts, and then we figure out from there what our revenues are, how are we going to fund these programs. I think it's that philosophical difference, but it's also one of these, every rating agency wants to be slightly niched, a little different, right? So they have their art, they have the science. And I think this is just a philosophical way, right? They are private industry. They look at revenues. It makes a lot of sense for most people, but expenditures, is what S&P looks at.
Jeff, did you want to weigh in on that?
Sure, I don't think I have much different to say than Maria did, only maybe in a different way, is that government agencies can't raise their revenue for the most part by their performance. As you well know, our property tax is restricted by law and really doesn't have anything to do with what we actually do. Some of our federal subventions are related to what we actually do, but only usually in process, requiring forms to be filled out. The only place in our county where we have a significant revenue source that is related to how much service we provide is the Hospital Enterprise Fund. I left out the Airport Enterprise Fund and the Sanitation District, but because they're pretty small, but really the only significant area where the better we are at providing services and the more effective we make more money is the hospital.
Got it. That's really helpful. And then the last slide you had, and I apologize, I didn't get the slides, so I'd love to get those sent over. But Maria, the last slide you had looked at how much money we have currently in debt service and how much this would allow us to lean in on debt service. Could you tell us the amount, what that amount of money equates to?
Let me pull this up for you. So we have about, can you see my PowerPoint at all? Or yeah, here.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. Yes, we can see it.
Yeah, here you go. So yeah, so we're about $2.5 billion in outstanding debt right now. So as you see from these, we're currently at 5.5% of our total government fund debt service and about 2.9% for our lease revenue bond debt service. So, you know, from a credit rating perspective, you could almost double what we currently have outstanding in terms of par amount. But of course, that will trigger then, one, do we have enough facilities that we can collateralize to issue new lease revenue bond debt? And of course, what is the impact on the budget? And that's where, you know, obviously the budget affordability becomes a different discussion than from, you know, a debt administration perspective. We simply look at what can we do rating wise without running into, you know, potential downgrade, which again is not necessarily a bad thing. We're still very highly rated, and that is of course a board priority. You know, we do what we need to do based on the board direction for what our community needs. But
and the outstanding 2.5 billion, that's over how many years?
30.
Okay.
Yeah,
so whenever you're using that number, it's a 30-year.
It's a 30-year, yeah, and knowing, of course, that that is the most recently issued debt. We have a lot of debt that will actually fall off in the next couple of years. So if we were to project this out for you, you will see, for example, the affordable housing GO bond debt service goes down very dramatically in the next 2 years, just because we needed to pay those off as fast as possible so we can issue the final tranche. And you'll see quite a few lease revenue bonds associated with the hospital mainly will also fall off in the next few years.
And then, and again, this may be a question for Dr. Smith. So as those get paid down, I mean, one thing I think would be really interesting, Dr. Smith, for us to have an opportunity to see would be how the debt service availability aligns with the priorities that you're looking at, because I know part of that would include the priority, I mean, the source of investment, like what we would be using to pay down those loans. And then I think the other point, Jeff, that Maria just raised that I think would be really important to understand is what is our collateral available? And that's part of the reason I've been so focused on us purchasing instead of leasing. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Did you have more?
No, that's okay.
Yeah, I think we can certainly provide you with that information. You know, with regard to general obligation bonds, you know, we have really just the seismic project and the housing bond, and the seismic project is going to drop off pretty soon. Obviously, the housing bond is not going to drop off, but we're going to be spending all the money, and we need to think about another general obligation bond to continue the work, the policy work. And those debts are linked specifically to a revenue source. So even though, you know, the rating agencies look seriously at that, you can see we're quite a bit below what our limit would be based on our revenue and expenditures. And so that is not something that we typically worry too much about because it has a designated funding source unless the economy falls apart and the taxes go away. But so far they're not going away. The just rate of rise is lower. With regard to lease revenue bonds, as you point out, the collateral is really the issue or one of the big issues. And the other big issue is our cash flow and revenue in the general fund. So we can bring to the board a discussion of our collateral and, go from there.
Yeah, and Jeff, I think those are all such good points. And it really does align to the discussion we were having on Tuesday about how you prioritize what. And some of it just has to do with lines of business, right? Like we have to prioritize certain things relative to the hospital, or it could negatively impact the general fund if we're not able to keep up with X, Y, and Z services, right? So,
yeah, right.
Yeah, so I get it's complicated, and I don't know a good way to explain that, but that's probably why I was so curious about how you all do it internally, because got a lot of moving parts here. And
Mostly what we try to do is find other sources of revenue, grants, governmental programs, whatever we can find for board priority capital improvements. And when we can't find enough, then we recommend to the board lease revenue bonds if we have sufficient collateral, which we do have sufficient collateral, and we can project sufficient general fund, which we do. But we try to keep it as small as possible because we don't want to overspend so that the board has more limitations in the allocation of general fund. But you're right, sometimes we have to recommend a GO bond, and the seismic project is a good example of a place where we just couldn't, this was before me, but the county just couldn't find enough revenue to build the new Sobrato Pavilion and all of the seismic upgrades without a GO bond. And if we had tried, we would have penalized the general fund for 30 years.
mm-hmm. Just one more question related to that. So if we have a $2.5 billion 30-year debt, that's with perhaps 600 million of that being Measure A?
Currently, yes. We have issued 350 the first time and 250 the second time, so around 700. Correct.
Okay, so 700 million of that. So about a little under a third of it is Measure A. And I'm wondering if there are any. Oh, you know what? I don't have a good way to form this question. I'll think more about it, Maria, and then just give you a buzz. I was really trying to better understand the flexibility that we had. Oh, well, let me ask it this way. So for all of the bonds that are currently being paid off for redevelopment, those redevelopment bonds are still attached to the cities they come from?
Correct. Yes, we have not taken those in. No, they're not us. They're still attached to whatever agency had the redevelopment agency.
So as those bonds are paid off, those monies start to come to the county or whatever level of government, right? Because
right, it trickles down. Exactly. It goes back to what used to be the tax increment. So it goes back to the taxing entities within the county.
Yeah, in our budget, it shows up as property tax.
Oh, because because part of the inflation of that number is inclusive of the bonds being paid off.
Well, yeah, it was always property tax, and the bond is held by the successor agency as they get paid off, and the money gets returned to us and the other jurisdictions as general property tax. I think James also has something he wants to say about this.
James, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I was just gonna explain that the redevelopment agency bonds are not like general obligation bonds. So they did not come with any new revenue stream. They were paid back by a diversion of general property tax revenue from the other agencies. And so that's why the money that now comes back the way the county executive said, which is it just flows back as general fund property tax.
Got it. But the increase, I mean, there's an increase we're anticipating to those funds, even if we can't anticipate the cash, we can anticipate well, I guess we can anticipate how quickly more revenue will end up in our coffers versus redevelopment, right?
Well, it's a little complicated, but basically the way the agencies worked is they captured all the growth in assessed value in an area, in a project area. And so all that growth would be diverted first into what is now the redevelopment property tax trust fund, but used to be the specific redevelopment agency. And then it's first used to pay off debts, including the bond debts, but it could include contracts and other things too. It's not just the bond debt service. And then whatever's left twice a year in that fund is distributed back to all of the agencies who would have otherwise gotten that property tax revenue. Most of those agencies are schools. So,
but us too, right, James?
But us, absolutely, us too, in the same proportion as other property tax revenue. And that's baked into the, it's about 17% on average. And that's baked into the base property tax estimates that the controller's office generates, that OBA uses to generate the budget. So in other words, that shows up as part of the estimated ongoing property tax revenue that's used to develop the base budget.
So what I would be interested in understanding is over what period of time, and James, you may have given us a report on this moons ago, but over what period of time do we anticipate the money, the continued increase to what gets received by the other taxing entities, by us in the schools? Because I understand the point you're raising, but for the board's purposes, understanding that's actually, I just don't know even how significant a resource that is. Because when you said 17%, you mean 17% of all property taxes?
The 17% of the funds coming out come to the county. That's our share.
Yeah.
That's our share of the pie. Yeah.
But I'm curious.
We did do a report. We did do a report a number of years ago, and we could dig that up.
Yeah, I would love to see that, because what I would love to understand is what's anticipated in the future for a couple of reasons. One is that, as we're looking at the leveling off, if that happens of property tax, it would be interesting to know what is leveling off because of the value of property versus how much will still continue to come because of that money being diverted back to the appropriate agency.
We already are seeing some of that, and when it comes back depends on the obligations that the individual redevelopment agency had when they were in play. We anticipate over time it will be many billions of dollars, or hundreds of millions of dollars, I should say. But that will require all the debt to be paid off in the redevelopment agencies. As you know, San Jose had a huge debt, so that won't be paid off for quite some time. But once it is paid off, the other taxing agencies will reclaim that big section of property tax, which will be a lot, and most of it will go to schools. The 17% is just how the allocations go from all property tax that is received. About it changes from district to district, and there's, I think, 3,000 different tax districts in our county, something like that, a lot. The average is that the county general fund gets about 17%. The schools get about 50%, and cities and special districts split the rest.
Yeah, and part of the reason I was thinking about it, Dr. Smith, is that some time ago, I thought that the board, and this actually may have just predated me, was interested in taking a percentage of the value of that return to invest in affordable housing. But either way, I think it's worth, just as we dive into budget, just making the board aware of that long term. But thank you, that was really helpful, and thank you for the report. And I would move receipt of it.
And I'll definitely second that. So I want to also thank Maria and her team for this report. Based on the historical debt ratio, looks like our debt limit has never gone but above 6% in the past 5 years. So there will be no impact, it seems to me, if we set at 8% to our level of service, and also somewhat assuring to the investors community with regard to our credit rating. So the question we have, I guess, with Maria, if the board decides to change this debt service down the road to say 10% or something higher than 8%, this is something that we need to vote as a board to amend this policy, correct?
That is correct. It's a board policy, so you have the right to amend at your leisure. Just don't do it too often.
We won't, don't worry. And certainly this is clearly very important information because it has implications on the funding in our general fund, and obviously our budget, and also our cost of borrowing, right? Because obviously if it somehow affect our credit rating, if that goes down, that means our cost of borrowing the money will definitely go up. And certainly a lot of this would require future broader conversation with Greg and the team and over the budget analysis to see if this is something we'll need to do for any additional budget requests and whatnot. So that being said, I look forward to hearing this item for the broader discussion when it comes back to the full board in January. And thank you for the good work again, Maria. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's all I have. And no further comments. Please take the vote.
Vice Chairperson Chavez.
Yes.
And Chairperson Lee.
Yes, as well.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that comes to, I believe it's going to be the last item for today, item number 14, report from probation department relating to the providing individual valuable opportunities to get a program strategy regarding the redesign of our ranch. And I believe, who do we have today? Oh, I see Mario from probation. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Lee and Supervisor Chavez. Mariel Caballero, Deputy Director of Probation Administration. And today I have with me Mandy Bly from the University of Cincinnati Corrections Institute, Probation Division Manager Mark Utzi, who oversees the ranch, and Assistant Chief Nick Burchard, who oversees the institution's division. We have a short presentation, but given the lateness of the hour, we're also just happy to take questions.
Okay, Supervisor Chavez, would you like to see the presentation, or are you ready to just ask the questions?
For them. Yeah, you guys have been here all day. Actually, I've had an opportunity to read the report, and the only thing, because I usually get, Mariel, some new information out of you because you're like a font of information, was really just to better understand if there was anything that the report or the study demonstrated that we should be applying that we weren't able to, that has you all concerned. Meaning, just your own take on, yeah, these are best practices and this is how we're gonna do it. It would be so great if we could add X component, but we weren't able to.
I'm going to turn it over to Probation Division Manager, actually Assistant Chief Nick Burchard jumped on, but also if Mandy is here, I think that they could speak more directly to that.
Yeah, go ahead, Mandy, and I can chime in after you're done.
I would say I don't know that there's anything that hasn't been done, but I think our timelines have been impacted by unforeseen things and things like that. So the work might stretch, but those things are still on the list. I think we've made good progress. I don't see anything that's going to hinder that continued progress. And there's, especially with I think the collaboration, Marielle, of the funding from both streams, right, would allow us to continue because it's work that supports both programs. So I think there's a plan for things to continue.
Yes. So Mandy is referring to the fact that the original grant that we are utilizing to do the ranch redesign ends in March of 2023. And then what we are doing is leveraging other funding sources to continue this work. So this work was delayed due to COVID and a variety of other issues, and including, staffing constraints. It's a very time intensive project to redesign a curriculum and redesign a program model. And there's a lot of collaboration between the probation department, the staff, UCCI, and the behavioral health department to try to figure out what is working best, what do we need to change. And so I think that from the perspective of what we have found is that this work is taking a lot longer than we anticipated. So that's been a big change, is that we've had to extend our work plan and also bring in new people, fresh blood every once in a while, but also because of staffing changes. And so bringing them up to speed and ensuring that we're doing this right, not fast, has been a change.
Yeah.
And Mark, I don't know if you want to say anything about anything that you are interested in working on that maybe we're not there yet.
No, I'm sorry. No, you hit on all the key points. It's all about, pivoting and bending when necessary. And that's what we've been doing. And just kind of like assimilating to what we have in front of everybody. So you're correct.
Thank you. That was really my only question. And but I'm really excited about the continued work. So thank you for all that.
Thank you. Actually, I didn't open the public hearing. Is anybody in the public would like to speak today?
There are no requests to speak.
Okay, then I will go ahead and close the public hearing. Thanks again for the report. I certainly looking forward to see the result as we move forward on this. And is there a motion to accept the report?
Yeah, I do want to also say the report was really just well laid out. So thank you for that. I would move approval to accept the report.
Thank you. And yes, great work with probation staff putting this together in the midst of the pandemic. So, all right, and I'll second that.
Vice Chairperson Chavez.
Yes.
And Chairperson Lee.
Yes, as well.
Thank you.
That's been received. I believe this is the last item of today, since the rest has been pushed to consent. And we will be going to adjourn the meeting, and our next meeting is going to be next year, isn't it?
See you next year.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye now.
Be safe, everyone.
Recording stopped.
Bye. Thanks.